My second wife was with me for 15 years. We had 2 daughters together. Because of my family responsibilities, I seldom drank at home, and I didn't drink as frequently. This is where I got so fed up with GE not doing things my way that I gave that career up and went through a bankruptcy. We owned a mini farm and 4 rental houses. We filed bankruptcy, I think it was for about $238,000. Lost everything. I've been struggling ever since. I used to talk about how I lost that job, but nah, we don't lose things. We throw them away. That's exactly what I did, and over the next 15 years, I had been holding on to a job for a couple of years, then moving on to another one. Frequently, I found myself back in the bar business again. I started managing a bar in a small town. I remember this is right about the time of the bankruptcy. I knew the bankruptcy was happening, and I remembered reading it in the newspaper. I knew right then and there I was going out to get drunk. I had a Mitsubishi pickup truck at the time. I had put a box with 2 years' worth of the bar's payroll documents in it, on the front seat. I'd been working on getting the bar's budget under control. I remember as I was about to drive by my house, heading to a bar, the thought crossed my mind to stop and take the box into the house. But I didn't want to argue about going to the bar to drink, so I didn't. I went home and got drunk, seriously drunk. I ended up hitting a tree downtown beside the Grand Wayne Center. I totaled the truck and got arrested for the 3rd time. The officer took me to the hospital and I refused treatment because I didn't have medical insurance. They just kind of bandaged me up the best they could. I had both my hands wrapped up in bandages, sitting in the jail. Bloody, hungover, drunk. I remember a real big black guy came over to me. They couldn't take my watch off because the bandages were so large. They'd usually remove any jewelry from your person before they lock you up. This real big black guy comes over and says, "That's my watch, and I'm taking it." I'm sitting there, my hands in bandages, and I look up at him and I said, "No, you're not." Like I could have done something about it. Fortunately, he was a nice enough man to go back and sit down. Either that or he probably just couldn't retain his laughter at what he'd just witnessed. This was a point where I was lucky to be alive. The cop had to pull me out of that truck. The bad thing was, for him to be able to get me out of that truck, he had to take all those documents out and throw them in the trunk of his squad car to be able to free me from this crushed vehicle. At the end of his shift, he took the squad car back to the station, and the cleaning crew went out and cleaned out the cars and threw all those documents away. So the lady I worked for lost 2 years of payroll records for her business. Needless to say, I was fired. There was this 2-year period between leaving GE and our bankruptcy. During this 2-year period, we cashed in my GE's pension and savings to open a farm market at our mini farm. My wife and I joined a Baptist church, and I worked retail jobs during the market's off-season. I remember our church had this spiritual revival thing going on that lasted about 2 weeks. It was more than revival worship services every night. This 2-week period was also many special events. Special groups meeting at different houses, prayer sessions at various restaurants, picnics and such, in addition to services with guest speakers. The last night of the spiritual campaign was a session with an open mic. People could get up and let the Holy Spirit encourage them to sing, share special moments they experienced throughout this revival, give testimony, whatever they felt led to do. During this session, the Holy Spirit moved me to get up and give a testimony of my life. I shared my 2 arrests and my life drinking and drugging. I finished by singing the Lord's Prayer. During the course of this 2-year period of time, I hardly ever had a drink and I can't actually recall ever getting drunk. My relationship with Christ was strong during this period again. But when the financial well went completely dry, and I had failed the security for my family, the devastation again overpowered me. My addiction had returned. After this 3rd arrest, having almost killed myself, my family facing homelessness, once again I found myself out of work. My life at this point had not only experienced financial bankruptcy, but spiritual bankruptcy as well. The judge kind of gave me a formal written invitation to attend Alcoholics Anonymous. This was the first time I had attended an AA meeting. I had lost my license for 90 days, was unemployed, and I had to find a home for my family. But I wasn't an alcoholic, you see. I was just a darn good drinker. As a matter of fact, I thought, I get paid to drink. So I was a professional drinker. I couldn't accept anything I was hearing at AA. I heard stories there. One guy talked about having a garden hose in his garage. His wife kept finding all the booze that he hid around the house, so he filled the garden hose with vodka. She never found that location. I sat there and I said to myself, well, that's not me. I'm not like that. Because I hardly ever had alcohol at the house. Hardly ever drank at home. So I wasn't convinced I was an alcoholic, but I was convinced I had to quit drinking. I was convinced this is it. I didn't buy into AA, but I bought into the fact that I had to stop drinking because I almost killed myself. For the next 5 years, I tried to do what we call control drinking. It went okay for a while. If I went to a bar or someplace like that, I'd just drink grapefruit juice. Every once in a while, I'd have 1 or 2 beers when we went out, but then I'd switch to grapefruit juice. It seemed to be going along pretty well. Then it got to the place where, well, I'd get drunk once a week. Well, a couple of years passed and I was forced to take a bartending job again. For the first 2 months, I didn't drink. Then it got to the place, well, I'll have 1 or 2 beers after work. That's all right. Then it got to the place I'd stop somewhere else after work so I wouldn't have to drive so far. Then once a week I started getting drunk. Then it got to be twice a week. Then 3 times a week. Then came my 4th arrest.